Mike Bloomberg has dropped out after spending nearly $600 million. What would you do with $600 million to make the world a better place? Well, I currently live in Nashville, and after the tornadoes that hit earlier this week, I imagine that could be put to good use around here. Make a serious open source design for the safest molten salt small modular nuclear reactor and give it away. Having one design for the world could make parts a lot more affordable, and with $600 million if it should be a great design and we could provide support. Probably do something similar to some of the other things Bloomberg has done in his life, like the $1.8 billion he gave for college financial aid or the $50 million to every town for gun safety to fight against gun violence. The guy is being slammed for what he did wrong instead of all the things he did right. He made those $50, $60 billion by himself. $600 million is only around 1%, so I'm sure he won't lose sleep over it. I'll applaud him for all the good he's done. Google it. Set up a sanitation company in South Asian countries that don't have well-developed trash disposal systems, in order to intercept garbage before it reaches the sea. $600 million on puts in CCL, NCL, and RCL, that should be enough to mess with the algos and crash their value. Trees are good for other things though. Trees prevent erosion and flooding, and thus careful placement can be good for the environment, though not necessarily for waste removal. Trees are also essential to many animals as part of an ecosystem. You do make a good point about other things being more effective in removing waste. I'm just trying to explain other reasons you still might want trees. Maybe the money should be split among the cultivation of different trees, kelp, moss, etc. Well, to be fair, the money he absolutely blew is by no means wasted. $600 million was liquidated and spent to companies. They pay employees, and in general, most of that money stays in the American economy. So, while it didn't help Bloomberg, it did help everyday working Americans. Sorta. That's the charitable view. Probably hookers and cocaine at this point. Run in the 2024 election cycle. Campaign to stop people like Bloomberg from running. I've heard conflicting reports of how much it would cost to address the problems with Flint, Michigan's drinking water, but whatever the actual number is, I imagine that $100 million or so should cover it. So I'd do that. Then I wouldn't feel so bad about spending most of the remaining $500 million on the purchase and renovation of my own private island. Buy every man, woman, and child in the United States 2 large sodas just to rub it in Bloomberg's stupid face. Oh, except Bloomberg. He doesn't get a soda, he just has to watch everyone else enjoy theirs. I'm from Long Island and spent a lot of time in NYC when he was mayor. He ran the city well and continued the Giuliani era basically. The one thing we hated was the soda tax. He's way too much into controlling what people do. That was our main thing we didn't like about it. It was the main point among other things. Running the city economically carried over from the Giuliani era was his strongest point. The city now with de Blasio is not clean, is too expensive, homelessness is on the rise, and it's generally less safe in certain parts. At McDonald's, the most cost-effective Coke you can get is large, which will apparently set you back $1.95 in New York, Bloomberg's home state, according to this website. That's about $2 for 30 ounces, about 850 milliliters, of drink. Because we're trying to get the absolute most bang for our buck, we're going to order this without ice, so we don't need to account for that. That means that for Bloomberg's $600 million boondoggles, you could order about 255 million liters of soda. That's somewhere in the vicinity of 100 Olympic swimming pools filled up to the brim. 30 ounces of Coke, non-diet, thank you, has 400 calories, so we've just bought about 120 billion calories. Assuming an average calorie consumption of 2,000 a day, that will cover one person for 164,000 years. But that's buying at retail. According to this, the cost to McDonald's for each soda is about 20 cents, so if we can get it at cost, we can multiply all of those figures by 10. Bloomberg picked up 1,689,082 supporters at the current count, which means that, as a back-of-the-envelope calculation, he could cover the daily calorific needs for every single one of his voters on Coca-Cola alone for about a year. One day, an old man was walking along a beach that was littered with thousands of starfish that had been washed ashore by the high tide. As he walked, he came upon a young boy who was eagerly throwing the starfish back into the ocean, one by one. Puzzled, the man looked at the boy and asked what he was doing. Without looking up from his task, The boy simply replied, "I'm saving these starfish, sir." The old man chuckled aloud, "Son, there are thousands of starfish and only one of you. What difference can you make?" The boy picked up a starfish, gently tossed it into the water and turning to the man, said, "I made a difference to that one. Give out $10,000 to random people until it ran out. Rescue all shelter animals and buy a big plot of land for them. Then invest in creating power out of trash to clean the ocean. Also maybe buy a house, I dunno. Quit my job so I don't have to drive my old pollution spewing truck to and from work anymore, therefore saving the environment. You're welcome, everyone. Invested in areas with a high rate of homeless people. So I would open shops where they can come to wash and dry their clothes, collect and exchange blankets and sleeping bags for fresh ones, somewhere to make a coffee or heat some food up, have a shave and a wash. Completely free. If this isn't feasible, I would pay for as many clean water wells in Africa. So more remote or very poor areas have clean drinking water. These things aren't much, but it is a start to help people who need it the most. We have somewhere in the vicinity of 450k homeless people in the US. Would it be hard to set up a fund to help them get back on their feet? I'm talking handouts, I'm talking serious programs where time is spent with the individual to understand their situation and skill set with the hopes of effectively putting it to use within society. It wouldn't end the problem, and I'm sure I don't know how to fully solve this problem, but that $600 million he wasted would have made things just that bit easier. I donated to mental health organizations and research to help the world know more about each new tap health issue, how to help it, and how to prevent it from getting worse. It would go to better the facilities throughout this country, make the process nicer and more efficient. Basically, I'd help the crazy people or the attention seekers, because yeah, they are crazy and no, they don't want your attention, they want your validation. Very similar but also very different. I'd spend it to spread the quote, "An act of kindness never started a war," and if you're nice to someone and they're mean in return, that's not on you. Leave them be, let them feel what they feel. Just no matter what, be kind to one another. Because one more person being kind is one less person being mean. I'd use it to build resources in my rural area. I work for a social service agency and there is a huge need for resources for people that have no transportation. They can find jobs but they have no way to get there. In my area, we have people that get out of prison and really want to turn their life around, but no one around here wants to hire them or give anyone a second chance. There is also a medical need for those that are elderly on Medicare, as it does nothing for them for dental or vision unless they meet certain criteria. There is a lot that I could do with that amount of money for the people in my county. Build my university a proper theater. Invest it and live off the interest for life. Develop a smart home system that doesn't require internet connectivity. Money is just a way of controlling what our labor time is spent doing. In this case, he directed $600 million worth of labor toward campaigning for him. That time could have been spent constructing a bunch of schools, and the same donation would have taken place. He's really reduced the overall productive output of society and therefore devalued the currency by whatever fraction $600 million is of the total value. Probably less than the Fed devalues it in a day, though. Wonder where this $600 million was spent? Hopefully, it made its way down to the pockets of some hard-working people and not from one billionaire's pocket to another. I'd educate people that the money doesn't disappear after spending it, but also that it's not really a good thing because it's now in the hands of advertisers and corrupt media specialists who will no doubt hoard it, instead introducing back into the system in a timely manner and thus propagating an already critical problem for our society. Keep $250 million for myself so I can retire at 13. The other $350 million goes to building new schools for third world countries, planting trees, building more strict prisons, and research for cancer, Ebola, brain damage, blindness, deafness, and, I can't stress this enough, hookers. Well, my first thing to do would be giving some nice sums to my friends, family, and people, like a couple of old teachers I had. Then, I'm not sure. Open a wildlife rehabilitation center probably, and animal hospital. And the prices won't be super high, and I use the money to do a lot of stuff for free for patients that can't afford it. Buy a bunch of land surrounding it, like a bunch that's protected so the animals and trees can stay safe and happy. There are countless things money could be used to help a person. Pay for someone's much needed medical procedure. Feed the hungry. Help the environment. Pay off someone's crippling student loan debt. Disaster recovery help. provide housing for struggling families, etc. He did make the world a better place, by dropping $600 million in new cash into the economies of a dozen different states, and likely dozens if not hundreds of different companies that helped throughout the campaign. With the dollar to real, Brazil, ratio today, I'd be able to enroll 15,000 kids into the most expensive school in my town for the entirety of their 12 years of studying, monthly bills and some little more for extra expenses. Mind you that it is the most expensive in town, so it's very much overkill. If that money were to be consciously spent, it would reach maybe quadruple the kids, giving the country 60,000 capacity workers. Universities are for free here and I am deducing they would get enrolled there, and even if they didn't, they would be very well educated and probably manage to succeed somewhere else. These workers would then need to generate about 45,000 Brazilian reais, about $10,000, for the economy to repay the investments. I know this is an extremely simplified line of thought, but it is very much an example of how this amount of money can change the lives of hundreds of thousands, if you include their families. I mean, that is education with all expenses paid plus some money. Imagine if you target just the poorest of an area, how many people would be lifted out of poverty permanently? And that is not the only way. Spending this kind of money in basic sanitation and hospital supplies for very poor nations can literally change the entire life of a country. I am absolutely loath the sheer arrogance to spend this amount of money to try to be president of the richest nation in the world, especially when he didn't even have a proper reason to try and be there. I'd run for political office under the guise of belonging to a party I share few values with, provide answers of no substance when questioned on my views, muddy an already overcrowded field of potential candidates, high-handedly push up the price of political advertising airtime in an entire country by buying it all up, and then bail out when the very predictable result that no one wants me finally penetrates my out-of-touch consciousness. Shit, you said to make the world a better place. Well, while doing that, I'd steal some votes and a few delegates from Biden during the Democratic primaries, giving Bernie an ever so slightly better chance to shove it up the establishment's ass. Thank you for watching Reddit Space. Please subscribe if you love these Reddit stories.